Good afternoon. This is your Tropical Atlantic Marine Weather Briefing, issued today, Thursday, June 13th, 2024. It's valid for the next 5 days through Tuesday, June 18th. I'm Jeff Lewitsky, a lead forecaster at the Tropical Analysis and Forecast Branch. First, let's take a look at the marine key messages for the next 5 days. For winds, at this time, no gales or tropical cyclones are expected, with winds less than 34 knots. For swell, also no very large swell events are expected, with seas less than 12 feet. However, there are two areas in the latest 7-day tropical weather outlook, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. Now let's take a look at the surface analysis from this morning. We have a stationary front over the northern Gulf of Mexico extending across northern Florida and then off the coast of the Carolinas, with a broad area of low pressure off the northeast Florida coast, and an elongated trough extending all the way back to the southwest towards the southwest Gulf of Mexico and Bay of Campeche. There's a lot of abundant moisture ahead of that trough, moving across portions of the southeast Gulf of Mexico, southern Florida Peninsula, and off the southeast Florida coast, also in the northwest Caribbean. Otherwise, we have several tropical waves moving across the basin and several troughs in the open Atlantic waters. Here's the tropical weather outlook valid through the next 7 days. We have two areas that we're watching. One is offshore the southeast United States, which is designated as AL90. It's an elongated area of low pressure. It has a 20% chance of formation through 48 hours and a 20% through the next 7 days. In the southwest Gulf of Mexico, there's a broad area of low pressure forecast to form this weekend or early next week. 0% chance for tropical cyclone formation through 48 hours and 40% through the next 7 days. Here's a look at the winds and waves from this morning, Thursday morning. We have some fresh to strong winds offshore of northern Florida there ahead of that stationary front and area of low pressure. Also some fresh to strong winds in the south central Caribbean Sea where we have some seas of maybe 8 to 10 feet. Otherwise, we have those several troughs in the open Atlantic waters with not much activity as far as elevated winds or seas with them. 24-hour forecast valid Friday morning. We still have elongated low pressure off the coast of the Carolinas and northeast of Florida. Could be some fresh winds, maybe locally strong north of the area. Also fresh to strong winds still in the south central Caribbean. However, seas have come down there a bit to more around 8 feet. Otherwise, the open Atlantic waters, marine conditions are fairly quiet. The 48-hour forecast is valid for Saturday morning. The elongated area of low pressure has lifted north of the area, still a trough extending off to the southwest towards north central Florida, and still maybe some fresh winds ahead of it. Could have some fresh to strong winds now moving from the south central Caribbean to the west, and seas look fairly quiet across all basins. Here's the 72-hour forecast valid Sunday morning. We start to see an expanding area of fresh to strong winds stretching from the south central Caribbean off to the northwest Caribbean, and also in the southwest Caribbean some fresh to strong winds, and seas are building a little bit there, maybe 8, possibly up to 10 feet. Otherwise, the Atlantic looks quiet as well as the Gulf of Mexico for Sunday morning. Your 96-hour forecast is valid for Monday morning. We have that expanding area of fresh to strong winds now reaching into portions of the west central southwest Gulf of Mexico, as there's the potential for low pressure to develop there and a tight pressure gradient increasing the winds. As a result of those winds, we have some building seas, maybe 8 to 10 feet, stretching from portions of the west central northwest Caribbean into the west central Gulf of Mexico. And last, for 120-hour forecast valid Tuesday morning, there's that area of fresh to strong winds again, shifting off to the northwest a little bit more from the northwest Caribbean into the Gulf of Mexico, and the resultant building seas there as well could be greater than 10 feet by this time. There also is potential for maybe a weak low near Bermuda with fresh to strong winds north of our area, but across our area, conditions across the Atlantic look fairly tranquil as far as winds and seas go, as well as the rest of the Caribbean Sea. So in summary, your marine key messages: no areas of gales or tropical cyclones or swell currently expected through the next 5 days. However, as shown, there are two areas we're watching in the latest 7-day tropical weather outlook. This has been your Tropical Atlantic Marine Weather Briefing. The next briefing will be issued by Sunday, 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, June 16th. Have a great upcoming weekend.